I've got something so exciting to tell you all. And no, it wasn't the Pokemon cards that I got this weekend, which were awesome. It's the fact that we are in a brand new studio out of CNBC's London offices. We've got the fancy lights, we've got some new cameras, we've got a great crew. It is a bit hot, but it is wonderful. That's the intro. So I guess welcome to the Tech Download. I'm Arjun Karpal, Senior Tech Correspondent here at CNBC, and we're kicking off with a super interesting guest, Cristiano Amon, who is the CEO of Qualcomm. Now, if you don't know Qualcomm, just a quick rundown. They are one of the biggest semiconductor companies in the world. They design what are known as system on chips, and we'll get into that, SoCs, you may have heard this term, under the Snapdragon brand name. These are chips that go into smartphones and they have loads of different components on them, and they power loads of smartphones in the world. They power other kinds of devices as well, such as laptops. And so the CEO has a great view into consumer electronics and effectively where this industry is going in the age of AI. So we're going to be talking about all the things, the hype of the devices coming up. And he tells us a little bit about some of those devices that are not yet revealed as well. He's going to talk about how AI is changing our relationship with the core device of the smartphone. He's going to also talk about what AI means for the way Qualcomm needs to start thinking about designing the chips that go into our future devices as well. One of the words you're going to hear a lot of in this conversation and other episodes in the future is the word agentic AI. The idea here is that we started off with this chatbot, this kind of input where we'd ask it questions, it'd give us a response. But actually, these AI companies are trying to take that a step further. They want these AI chatbots to be like assistants, effectively, like agents working on behalf of us, at times autonomously carrying out tasks on our behalf. Then you're going to hear a little bit about some of the other innovations that are making AI devices possible from the Qualcomm CEO. One of those is something called MCP, or Model Context Protocol. This is effectively an open source system for AI assistants to connect and communicate with other data and also other apps. Is important if you think about it. If you want your agent to be able to go and carry out stuff on another app, for example. And then the final innovation you're going to hear about is something called the cloud versus edge processing. So a lot of the times when we're using these AI chatbots, effectively your data is being sent to the cloud, is processed there, and then comes back to your device, and you effectively get your answer. But a lot of device makers are thinking, how can we run those AI models and those AI processes actually on the device? That could mean it's faster and more secure, and that's something that Qualcomm is working on with its chips as well. I'm excited to bring you this conversation with Cristiano Amon, the CEO of Qualcomm. Welcome to the Tech Download. Cristiano, thanks so much for joining me on the Tech Download.
Very happy to be here. Looking forward to this conversation, Arjun.
So Cristiano, look, we're going to be talking today about AI devices, the future of how we're going to interact with our personal electronics in the future, given how AI is proliferating so many of these devices as well. But I think first it's important for our audience just to lay out, when we talk about AI devices, an AI smartphone, an AI laptop, what does that exactly mean?
Look, it's a great topic of conversation, especially because we are now getting to the point on this AI transition journey that we have clarity, what those devices are going to be and what they're going to do. But I'm going to answer your question by saying you're still going to have your phone. Your phone's not going to go anywhere. But your phone's going to get much better. Your phone is going to have agents that's going to operate the phone for you. But then there's going to be new classes of devices that we're going to wear. And I will answer your question. I want to say, what do those things really mean? And we've been talking about something called personal AI devices. As large language models and large visual models understand the world the way we understand them, understand how we communicate, it's very logical that we're going to interact with those devices close to our senses, closer to our eyes, close to our mouth, to our ears. And then there's going to be things that we're going to wear Glasses is very natural, but there's going to be jewelry, there's going to be pendants, there's going to be pins, because the type of interface is kind of very different than what used to be in your PC and your smartphone. And that's going to be a new class of devices. They're going to be part of our mobile experience.
You mentioned something interesting about large language models, and that goes to the point about what's changed to allow devices these days to be more personal.
Okay, it's a number of technologies, and I'm going to break it down for you. I think the first one is those large language models got pretty good, and they got pretty good, and they also got very specialized. Not only language models, but also visual models. You started to hear about words like multimodal, that you have models that are going to take different inputs. It's going to take audio, it's going to take language, it's going to take vision. You start hearing about smaller models, mix of experts models. They're very specific for certain functions. You started to hear about distillation of models that there's a big model that got trained and then you became a smaller model. And you starting to hear about those models being connected to different applications. You hear about technologies such as MCP protocols that a model can go to the internet and connect to other apps, to other cloud services. And then the last part of this basket of technologies is, I'm sure you heard about OpenClaw, those techniques called orchestrators, that agents that go operate your computer, your device for you, going to look at your data, it's going to look at the models and get things done for you. When you put all of this together, you created the condition for us to start changing our mobile experience. And you start to interact with mobile devices in the way we're going to interact with agents. Very different. There's no keyboard. You don't need to touch. You just needed to see and talk. And I think that starts to create the precondition for us to see this mobile revolution that is happening because of AI.
So, Cristiano, let's tackle some of those. You talked about the models because we've been discussing a lot about large language models, these huge, massive models that have been trained, that are then being underpinning these chatbots that so many people use. But there is also discussion about more of these models becoming smaller to run on the device rather than in the cloud. And that's a big part of what you're working on at Qualcomm. How important is the development of models right now in terms of underpinning the future of some of the agentic AI experience which you've been talking about?
Look, it's really important, and those models will continue to be developed. But I think we're getting to the point in the industry now that we're starting to reach maturity and the understanding how those models and computers are going to work together. I'm going to be a little bit provocative because I remember there was a lot of discussions about maybe 2 years ago, 1 year ago. There was a lot of debate about, is this model going to run on the cloud or this model going to run on the edge? Can I run this exact model that is running on the cloud on the devices on the edge? But I think that was the wrong discussion. Think about, for example, Arjun, if I ask you how many apps do you have on your phone? And you're probably going to tell me probably over 200 apps. Organize it in folders. And if I ask you, let's go one by one and see which app run on, what portion of the app run on the cloud, what portion of the app run on the device. It's probably a useless exercise. And I know they're all doing both because if you put your phone in airplane mode, it becomes not very useful. So I think the same thing is happening with AI. AI is just a new form of doing computing, and models are now developing in a way that they're specific, that are going to be running on the edge. They're models that are specific, they're going to be running on the cloud, and they're going to go work together as one, and there's actually an industry term now called compute continue. It's going to be like one integrated system about this. And I'll give you an example. What do I mean? If I am going to interact with my future personal AI device, let's say a smart glass, and I'm going to interact the way I'm interacting with you right now, I need to have an instant response. I may be walking on the street and and I say like, who's this person? And the model's going to say, that's Arjun from CNBC. You know him. You probably want to say hi. I cannot wait. I cannot just ask the question, keep walking, and wait for the tokens to come in. So the same thing. If I read a menu and I say, what does it say? You want an instant response. If I look at QR code, please pay this for me. So what is happening is the compute is naturally breaking down in what's going to happen on the edge, what's going to happen on the cloud. They're going to be integrated. One is not going to function without the other. And I think that's going to kind of define how we think about your future of consumer electronics and devices in the age of AI. And I'm just going to tell you, it's no different than what happened to cars. What happened to robots? Actually, those are great examples of edge AI. You know, they actually run in the robot and they run into the car.
So let's get into this term AI devices, what exactly it means. Well, we've obviously got the smartphones, but over the past few years, there's been an explosion, of course, of all these different types of chatbots. We're thinking OpenAI's ChatGPT, we're thinking Anthropic's Claude, we're talking about Google's Gemini, all of these now, and they're getting much more sophisticated. And now device makers are thinking, how can we integrate all this AI into all of these different types of electronics? And ultimately, what does it mean for the way we're going to be using devices going forward? This part's really important because we're about to talk about different types of AI devices that are coming up. And you're going to hear mention of things like smart glasses. If you haven't seen those, Meta produces some smart glasses which have sort of a camera in them. Samsung, Qualcomm, and Google are all working on smart glasses. There's lots of companies looking at this space, many thinking this could be a new frontier for AI devices as well. The other thing we're going to mention here is AI pins. Now, you may have not have seen these kind of devices because they were popular for a very fleeting moment in 2024. And it was a company called Humane which brought one of these to market. It was basically a small square thing that you attached to your clothing. It had a camera in it, no screen, but you could talk to it and it'd give you answers, and it would also project text onto a surface such as your hand or a table or something. And it was equipped with AI. And the project effectively flopped. It got some pretty bad reviews, and you can read all the reasons why it didn't take off at that time. But it was a glimpse into the way device companies were thinking about the future of devices in a world of AI. And we are now starting to see more and more companies, non-traditional device companies, looking at consumer electronics. One example is OpenAI, the maker of ChatGPT, which hired the famous Apple designer Johnny Ive to work on a device. So that's going to be very interesting whenever that's revealed. But it also shows you the way you are getting new entrants into this consumer electronic market and the way that we may be getting new styles of devices that we haven't seen before. One word that is a huge buzzword right now, and we've mentioned it already, is this idea of agentic AI. Now, when I hear it being spoken about, the kind of utopia of it is effectively these AI systems are going to be able to autonomously do things on our behalf, like the most smart personal assistant out there. When it comes to agentic experience on consumer devices, what does that look like in your view?
Okay. This is actually one of the questions I love answering because, even though we have been changing the Qualcomm and we're becoming a much more diversified company, we're still, one of the biggest providers of mobile technology. And it's fascinating now to see what's happened with those agents and what's happened with the mobile phone. When we talk about agents, and I'm kind of convinced 2026 is going to be the year of agents. We're starting to see this now getting scale. And those things became really popular and went viral, I think, on the internet when OpenClaw was launched. And you have now this thing that you install on your computer, and you ask the agent to do things for you. You create agents, and it goes to your data, does things on your behalf, operate your machine for you, go to the internet. And then what you saw happening, I remember, I think, people were going in and buying computers. There's a lot of people buying Mac Minis. They were sold out, and they put it into their office, and they install OpenClaw and let the thing running and consuming tokens like crazy, going to their Anthropic accounts and the OpenAI accounts, consuming all the tokens. Now, what that did it shows a path how we're going to interact with our computers. We are going to use our computers, but the agent's going to use our computers on our behalf and do things for you. Now, in a mobile environment, there's no way you're going to get a backpack, put a car battery, put a Mac Mini, and carry that alongside your phone. So those things are going to happen in the phone. And I think that's also going to define how, from the phone experience, given like more billions of people wear phones. So now we have clarity what is an AI phone and an AI PC is. And I'm going to break that to you. What's going to happen, your phone is going to have dual personas. Your phone will continue to be your phone. Phone's not going to go anywhere. You're going to get your phone. When you pull up your phone out of your pocket, you're going to go to your apps and you're going to do those things. But the phone also is going to have those orchestrators, those claws. You're going to see between now and summer, you're going to see every OS vendor talking about their OS having an orchestrator and a claw. And you'll be able to also get agents to do things for you. And it's going to operate your phone on your behalf. It's going to go to your apps. You're going to give them instruction. It's so profound, this change, that even if I go a moment outside the phone, I'm just telling what happened with software companies, the whole SaaS industries. Now software companies develop their software for a human to utilize, and there's a human interface to you, but also for an agent to utilize, to go into their software and do things. And the way this is going to play out, it is fascinating. For example, you're going to have the things that you do yourself, but it's going to be the agent doing things for you. I've saw some examples that somebody has a meeting, and then another invitation come up, and we'll say, Cristiano, you have this podcast with Arjun from CNBC. Would this take priority after this other meeting? I'm going to say, of course it takes priority. Then he said, okay, can I reschedule this other meeting for you? And you say, yes. And the agent will call the person, if he needs to talk to a person, will send an email, we'll figure out how to reschedule the things for you based on your calendar. And slowly, we're going to get used with those new experiences, and over time, your phones are going to be doing both. It's going to be being operated by the agent, and it's going to be operated by you.
I'm just waiting for an agent that can clear my inboxes for me. That's the biggest thing. And Cristiano, when you look at the roadmap then for this, you said 2026 is going to be the year of the agents. It feels the last 2 years, a lot of smartphone companies have been talking about AI integrating into their devices, but actually none of it has been this kind of agentic type of experience you're describing. Do you believe that happens in 2026, and to what level, I suppose? And then, as you look forward with all the device partners you work in, what's the roadmap for that becoming more advanced?
It's interesting. If you remember the transition from a feature phone to a smartphone, which is a huge transition, like the phone became a computer, what happened is the early days of the smartphone, the very early days, the apps that you had, it were the apps that come from the OEM. Right? And so I'm sure when you buy your iPhone, it comes with iTunes. It comes with that app that you can move drums and instruments and play around. But eventually what happened is the App Store became available, and developer starts to write all sort of different apps. And I can tell you right now, the absolute majority of the experience that you have on your phone today, it didn't come from the OS itself, it didn't come from the OEM, but it actually come from developers. It is a platform, it's a computer. Actually, the smartphone is the largest platform ever created by mankind. Okay, now let's do a parallel what we saw on AI. AI happened. First application that we saw was chat box. People go in, they ask a question, they get an answer. Then they started, to do more advanced, summarize this to me. And then a lot of the OEMs said, how can I apply AI to my camera? How can I apply AI to this different functionality? And kind of mix usability. Some things were very useful. Some things, it's kind of early days, but then something happened. Those orchestrators and those agents happened. And then everything started to change, because now AI can become very useful, and AI can do things for you. I think we are at that inflection point. And that's why I said 26 is the year that those things start to be clear and those things starts to get scale with those agents. So much so that you're going to see between now and summer, every OS vendor talking about how they're going to have those orchestrators built into the OS. Because that becomes, agents are the new apps. Those orchestrators becomes the new app store. And we're going to see the coexistence of the old and the new, in the same device, because in the case of a phone, you only carry one device. You don't carry two. And then we're going to see some other classes of devices which are just agents, no legacy, like smart glasses, personal AI devices, and PIN. And I think that's the reason I like to draw this parallel, because it went from how an OEM or an OS will add first-party AI capabilities to an endless, I think, set of possibilities as people create their own agents and agents started to operate devices on your behalf.
We're going to talk about those new types of devices in a sec, but my first question on the back of that answer is, does this mean that apps are dead?
They're not dead, but apps are going to change. Absolutely, apps are going to change. I'm going to go back to something I said 2 years ago. All of us have a banking app. Like you have a banking app. You have your bank of choice, and you have the app. So you have a developer. That the developer imagine how would the app going to be that most of the bank users are going to like it. What are the color? It's going to fit into a screen of your device. It's going to have a menu, and you're going to start the app. It's going to say, this is my checking account. This is how much money I have on the bank. This is my last transactions. This is my credit card. This is my investments. And the way it's going to be done is going to be the way that most people are going to like it. Okay. Now, that app in your phone, your banking app in your phone, has your credentials, so it can go to the bank, authenticate itself as a proxy of you, and get that information to you. Now you can have an agent that you can give the credentials to your bank. And the way the app is going to be, the same app experience, I'm going to describe it to you. You're going to say, how much do I have in my checkings account? And they're going to say, this is how much you have. What was my last 3 transactions? Can you please plot a graph for me about this? And then if you said, I want this information to be displayed to me, my screen, but no, I don't like the colors, how the app is. I want it to be a different colors, and it will render for you. So this is the difference. This is the fundamental difference, how apps are going to evolve into agents. And they're going to come way more powerful, way more bespoke, and they're going to be integrated into everything. You can be in a restaurant, and you're going to look at a QR code with the bill. I'm going to say, pay this for me. Please take off my check-ins account. Notify me when I'm done. That's going to be different than you open the app and go through the process yourself.
And among many of the important things you said through this episode so far is that you believe the smartphone is still going to be critical. Do you believe this is still going to be, central to the world of agentic AI? And how do you expect our relationship with our smartphone to change?
Yes and no. So let me kind of step back a little bit and talk about how our digital life, especially from a consumer standpoint, is going to work. We are coming today, in the present time, into a world that the absolute center of our digital life is our smartphone, our most inseparable device. Everything is around the smartphone. Like the smartphone is like the sun, every planet is around the smartphone. So much so that if you look of what was defined as a smart wearable, those smart wearables, their job was to extend the functionality of the phone to you. Let's go to a simple thing as a smart watch. You will give your time, we'll send sensor data from you to the phone, and we'll get notifications from the phone back to you. And it's so integrated that actually you see how the industry actually works. The same phone company actually is the one that's doing a lot of the wearables and its ecosystem. There's a big change now. In the future, and it's a very near future, especially as agents started to get scale, The center of your digital experience is the agent that you choose or the multiple agents that you choose. And now everything is around the agent. The phone is around the agent. The new classes of devices, I know we're going to talk about that in a second, are going to be around the agent as well. And the agent will be the one that will understand human intentions and will do things for you. So there is a shift in what the center of gravity is, I think, for your digital life. And that's going to change the relationship with our devices. And with that, I'm going to answer your question. Will the phone disappear? Absolutely not. The phone is an incredibly useful device. The scale of the smartphone is tremendous, but we're going to use our phones a little bit different. Remember when the smartphone arrived, some people said the laptop is dead. Absolutely, the laptop was never dead. The laptop's still here and is still strong, but the way you used to work on your laptop changed. Workloads shift. I like to provide this example because it's easy for most of us to understand. We started doing e-commerce on a laptop. We started doing social media into a laptop. That's where you go to your Facebook account. Now, most of e-commerce and social media is done on a mobile device. So your phone's still going to be there, but certain workloads are going to shift to new classes of devices because it's going to be better for the agent to interact with you, and this new class of devices is going to be better for you as well. So I think in summary is your phone's going to still going to be there. Your phone is going to change. It's going to have a lot more computing because you're going to now do your phone things, but you're going to run agents that is going to operate the phone for you. And then your experience that you have on the phone, some of those experiences are going to migrate to new devices that are easier to interact with you in human language and human vision.
So let's talk about those devices then, Cristiano, because you mentioned a few through this conversation. And maybe we should start with glasses because, this is a project you've been working on with Google and Samsung. And we know
Meta.
Samsung are going to launch these this year as well. What do you think glasses are going to be the next most important device?
100%. Look, the numbers speak for themselves. We have now shipping to the order of multiple tens of millions of smart glasses per year. We have line of sight in a couple of years, this could become into the order of hundreds of millions of glasses and could become as big as smartphones. Smartphones, is for you to know, it's about 1.2 billion phones a year. And the reason that is becoming a clear winner is because when you wear a glass, first humans wear glasses. Some of us do, right? And it's so you already have an industry at scale for glasses. The second thing is glasses is very natural for you to put cameras because when you turn your head, whatever you're seeing, the camera is seeing. So see what I see. It's close to your ears for speakers, it's close to your mouth for microphone. You will be able to read what you read. So glasses become very natural for you to interact with a model with multimodal, I think, human language and vision. And then it's become very easy for you to understand how certain workloads that are very low friction for you to interact with those kind of devices can easily migrate to a glass. And we're starting to get scale. And I go back to what I said earlier about the role of a wearable in the world where there's smartphone in the center and the role of a wearable where the agent is in the center. It's fascinating. When the first smart glass was launched, the job was to take a picture and post it on Instagram or generate a story from Instagram. It was basically an extension of the camera of your smartphone and also the ability for you to listen to music. That was it. But now that you have agents, every week you get a new feature. Every week you get an integration with another cloud. And it develops completely independent than how the phone develops. And I think that's exactly how we describe, and I am very bullish on glasses, as you know.
Right now, the early sort of wave of glasses have focused on having the camera in there, but there's a lot of discussion around, making the glasses have sort of screens, augmented reality style, mixed reality style, displays, as well as the ability to control these glasses with movement of hand and various other things. What are some of the big innovations you think are coming to smart glasses in the coming years?
Yes, everything that you just said. First of all, there are going to be different classes and price points. I think on the very basic is ability for the model to consume and see images and audio. But then we're starting to see a lot of interesting technology in terms of displaying information for you into the glasses. And I believe that's going to become mainstream. So I think the number one is, how do I get information? How do I get text? How do I get directions? How do I get superimposed information? There's a lot of very interesting technologies on display, on projection, and I think that is going to become mainstream. And the other thing is how you're going to take some techniques and technology. Many of it we develop for virtual reality glasses, like track your eyes and track different things around your hands, and that will create control points for you to operate, especially if you have images that are displayed back to you.
The other device you mentioned in this conversation, Cristiano, was pins. And I think it was a couple of years ago, there was this kind of viral moment with a pin that came out. And, it kind of flopped. Was it too early? Was there just no appetite for this kind of device? And is there a future for this kind of device?
Yes. I think we all know the answer at this point. It was early because that was before Gen AI. It was before the Gen AI. It was before orchestrators and agents. But now that you have them, you can see the value of this. But to be fair with you, other than glasses, the other form factors are not yet defined. I think there's going to be a lot of experimentation with different form factors. We've been working with every cloud company and every AI company right now. We have over 40 designs of those devices. And I'm telling you, the types of form factors are very, very broad. I think the view. You're going to see jewelry. You're going to see earbuds. They have a camera. You're going to see pendants. You're going to see pins. You're going to see watches. You're going to see other things that people carry. And we'll see how this is going to evolve. But the principle is something that you wear, something is with you all the time, something that can see the world around you, so you have context and have the ability for you to access to an agent and talk to the agent. It's definitely within the next few years, we're going to see all those devices in the market, and we'll see what people want.
And Cristiano, I know it's an open secret. You guys are working with OpenAI on their own device, and I know there's not much you can say about that. But it also underscores the way how non-traditional companies who haven't really been in consumer devices before are thinking about consumer devices in the age of AI. You mentioned you've got all these different designs sort of in the works. Going forward, are you expecting more companies who haven't typically been in consumer electronics to get into this space because of the opportunity they see with AI devices?
100%. And let me explain to you why is this happening. Because and I will touch on one thing that I said before, Arjun. Remember I told you, when the smartphone is at the very center of your digital experience, it's more conducive for you to have a vertical ecosystem, when the same company that provides the phone provided all the wearables devices. But now when the agent or collection of agents is the center of the ecosystem, you may have a horizontal play. You may have multiple devices because they're loosely connected because they're connected to the agent. That creates opportunity for many companies to enter the space. As a matter of fact, when you look of glasses that humans buy, Those are fashion devices. Those are fashion companies becoming technology companies. Those are not necessarily consumer electronic devices. And I think to go back to your question about why are those companies doing this? As we go to this transition, there was training, creation of the models and AI into the data center. Then there was inference to generate tokens. But then now you have agents that generate demand for those tokens. What those companies realize with the rise of agents is that the AI is going to be utilized by humans. It's not that those humans are going to go show up in the data center, ring the bell, and say, give me some AI. So what happened is all the devices that we wear become endpoints for agents. And those AI companies understand they have to win those endpoints from agents. And there's the last piece of data is the one that nobody talks about it, but we're going to remember this conversation in a few years when when people start talking about this. The reason we have AI today is because we digitize all of our information, all of our books and things we write and emails and stuff on the internet, social media posts, all of this information, web pages is in the internet, is digital. Now you can train models. But once we start using agents every day, we start walking around with our smart glasses to see what we see, that amount of data, it's massive. It's exponentially larger than what we use to train models. So those companies want to have access to the data because it's important to train future models and get context for you because your consumer experience is going to be bespoke. All of those things point to why are those companies interested in doing devices. And we're very excited that all of the chips that we do, from an earbud of sub 2 milliwatts to a 2,000 watts chip as we enter the data center, becomes relevant to all of those companies.
Right, I just want to talk about chips for a second. Not chips, the type that you eat, depending if you're in the UK, that means something very different to if you're in the US. But I want to talk about a term called SoC, or system on chip. Now, this is effectively a piece of silicon with lots of different types of chips on it. And you'll hear Cristiano Amon mention some of those, so I just want to quickly lay out what they are. The first one is the Central Processing Unit, or CPU. This is effectively the brains of a device. It does all the general computing tasks like handle apps and the system as well. The second one is a Graphics Processing Unit, or GPU. This renders graphics for gaming or the actual device itself. Another one is called the Neural Processing Unit, or NPU, and this handles the AI workloads. And all of these are integrated into one piece of silicon and thrown into your devices. And that's something effectively that Qualcomm designs. That, however, is manufactured by other companies. And if you've heard previous episodes of the podcast, we've spoken so much about the chip supply chain. But right now, there are a load of bottlenecks within the entire semiconductor supply chain. One of those is around memory. Now, all your devices have some sort of memory in it, your laptop, your phone. And what's happened is there are very few companies in the world that can produce this memory chip. And all of that right now is being funneled towards AI data centers and AI chips. And so there's a big shortage of memory for things like consumer electronics devices. That is a big topic right now, a focus for all kinds of electronics companies. And it's something that Cristiano Amon and I spoke about. At the heart of all of this is the chips that are going to power these devices. And Qualcomm, of course, one of the leading players in this space. What do all of this proliferation of new types of devices that are running AI mean for the way you're thinking about chip architecture? This desire to pack more and more on a chip and to make them more powerful and more energy efficient. And so as you think about all these new devices, what does it mean for the way chips are going to be designed going forward?
It's an incredibly exciting time for semiconductor companies and for semiconductor companies like Qualcomm. We had the privilege, and it was a privilege, to be developing our capability in the mobile industry, because the mobile industry is very unforgiving. Every generation, users want a more powerful phone that does more things, that play games, have big GPUs, big CPUs, but it still has to fit in your pocket, still has to have an all-day battery life, and it still cannot get hot. I don't have the ability to do liquid cooling and put a radiator into a smartphone. So that create a DNA in our semiconductor engineering that you have to pack more compute in a very efficient way. And I think that it's a great problem for a company like Qualcomm to solve. It's also true on glasses. How can I put a lot of compute and be very efficient with battery in a glass in a pendant? So I think that is fundamentally changing architecture. We're increasing dramatically the ability to have neural processing units, neural processors that are going to run, those smaller models into those devices, working alongside the big models in the cloud. That means the area of the silicon and the amount dedicated to running models increased dramatically. That's both on the GPU and the neural processing unit. We need a faster and more power-efficient CPU because agents drive the CPU. And we need to do this in a way that continues to be smart about how we manage connectivity and the battery life. Our entire roadmap is in a process of upgrade right now, an entire roadmap. Because I believe none of the devices we have today are prepared for the future. You're going to have to upgrade your phone, you're going to upgrade your PC, you're going to have those new classes of devices like glasses and pendants. Your car is going to get upgraded, that you're going to be able to talk to agents on the car. And I think that's going to happen across everything that we interact. It's a new form of computing, it's a new form of software, and require a new architecture of silicon.
And how important would the CPU been? This is going to be a big debate so far, and people talking about CPU having a renaissance, not just in the data center now, but even as we think about these consumer devices.
Super important. It's 100% correct. And to go back to this example I gave it to you about when we started the conversation about agents. You have parallel processing at scale, like a GPU or even an NPU, but those orchestrators, they actually handling very complex tasks. They're going to check your data, check the model, go to the internet, and that's a CPU that orchestrates all of this. Those orchestrators live on the CPU. So now all boats are rising because, like what I see at Qualcomm, our CPU became very important, and the fact that we have the leading CPU in the industry in phones and PCs, and soon we're going to announce our CPU for the data center on June 24. CPUs are going to be very important. NPUs for inference and power-efficient inference is going to be very important, and also GPUs will continue to be important. So this is why I think it's great time to be in the semiconductor business right now.
And the semiconductor industry is seeing a huge explosion of interest, of innovation, and demand. And with that of course has brought a number of bottlenecks around the supply chain, whether that's in access to memory, whether it's in the actual manufacturing of these chips from the fabs as well. There's a big debate over whether some of the cyclicality that we've historically seen in the semiconductor industry is changing. How are you navigating all of these different challenges right now, particularly as it pertains to things like memory and capacity constraints?
Well, first of all, before I answer that question, if you have some memory, I'll buy it from you. Okay. So I think the industry right now, it's unfortunately is dealing with something similar that we had to deal with it during the pandemic. We had significantly more demand than supply, and memory has become a bottleneck. I think capacity was not built for this AI reality, but I'm optimistic that the industry have found ways to deal with those things, and a capacity will be built. I think the question about cyclical process, I feel this is a little bit different. I think the whole computing infrastructure of the world has been upgraded. The whole computing infrastructure. AI is basically a different way to run software. You need different and more powerful computers. What you generate is tokens. That's the new currency of the AI world. And as I said during our conversation, the existing compute infrastructure, it's not capable and needs to go to a process of upgrade. And the same demand that we're starting to see in the data center will continue, but is also, as agents get a hold and start to get scale, is going to happen with the rest of the devices. I wish we have more memory. I think we've been, working with the industry to get more capacity. That is also true on semiconductor manufacturing. But, it's a good problem to have. And I feel that I'm optimistic. Some people talk about this only get resolved by 2028. I feel I'm more optimistic about that. I think sometime in 27, or at least the second half, we should see more capacity becoming available, different architectures that are going to make use of memory more efficient. And I think creates opportunities for a company like Qualcomm that has been very economical in the use of power and the use of memory, building devices of the edge, to do something disruptive in the data center. And that's what we want to show when we unveil our roadmap at the end of June.
And with all this innovation and interest in semiconductors, it's brought an interesting amount of competition. I think more on the data center front. How do you think competition is going to play out in terms of the consumer electronics side? Because, we haven't seen a huge amount of new players in terms of consumer electronics. I know Apple's been laser focused for some time on its own chips for its products as well. We've got Google Tensor in the Pixel. Samsung, of course, is a partner with yours, but also uses its own Exynos chips. Are you expecting, as new devices come to market, new form factors come to market, that you may see increased competition and new players in this space?
This is an awesome question. And look, I cannot predict the future, but I can tell you one thing, though. One thing I can predict. What we have seen in the mobile industry, from 2G to 3G to 4G to 5G, it changed. The players changed, device changed. And I know we didn't talk about it in this conversation, but we're working on 6G, which is actually the next generation wireless for the age of AI, and actually those new classes of devices. So what we're starting to see happening right now, and we touch on this point when we had this conversation about personal AI devices, what we're seeing right now is the players that are interested in the mobile industry are changing. Now, all AI companies are looking at mobile devices at endpoint, and they're building devices. So one thing that I started to see, I already see it today, is starting to see association between smartphone OEMs and AI companies, association between smartphone OEM and models. And I actually think this landscape, it's going to be very different as the workloads in your phone started to be driven by agents and models, and the players are going to be very different. So I think this industry is going to see change. I cannot predict the winners and the losers, but I can predict change. And I think it's likely going to change the relationship between smartphone OEM, OSs, and agents. That's going to change. And on the silicon side, look, we always had competition. And I think competition has been good and incredible for all those industries. That's why I think data center is going to see competition too. And the rule that we had follow, I think one thing that is unique about Qualcomm, as players came, they went away. We saw in the mobile industry, many companies went from hero to zero. We stay, because if you have the right technology, if you have a leading technology, there's always room for you. And success today is no guarantee of success tomorrow. So we have to continue to reinventing silicon and innovating. And I think that's what we see in front of us with this transition of the mobile industry and consumer devices with AI.
Cristiano, I always learn so much speaking to you. It's so much food for thought as well. And I'm excited to see some of these things you've teased out on this episode coming out over the sort of next few months and year or so. So thanks so much for joining me.
My pleasure. Always a pleasure talking to you, Arjun, and I look forward to see you soon.
Some really interesting stuff in that conversation with Cristiano Amon. But actually, I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear your thoughts about the episode or anything that Cristiano was speaking about there. You can get in touch directly with me. I'm on X, LinkedIn, TikTok, Instagram. Just search my name, Arjun Karpal. You can also email us on thetechdownload@cnbc.com. If you did like this episode, subscribe, drop us a like, drop us a comment, whatever you like. And we'll catch you next time on The Tech Download.